This is the Agency Balance Podcast, where we talk about agency life, client relationships, and your own personal balance. Agency Balance is sponsored by SmartAcre. SmartAcre helps you automate, enhance, and accelerate your B2B marketing. Visit GetSmartAcre.com to get your free marketing and sales assessment.
Here are your co-hosts of the Agency Balance Podcast, David Snyder.
And I'm Lisa Zwickel.
Welcome to another episode of the Agency Balance Podcast. We've got another guest, an amazing guest. This gentleman I met a little over a year ago, Jonathan Epstein. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I guess it has been a year.
Yeah, and what a year it's been. Jonathan has an amazing background, an interesting background, and I thought it would be interesting to have him come on and tell his journey and his story. You know, obviously we're about balance, and you're balancing multiple gigs. You're out there. You're just one of those entrepreneurs, aren't you?
I feel like I'm the guy in the circus that has all of the plates spinning, and I'm just trying not to let one drop.
Oh. Well, you're doing a pretty good job, at least from my vantage point. Yeah. So, in complete transparency, so we met through we came into one of your spaces here. So our SmartAcre rents from your company, but you also have another thing going on.
I have a couple of things going on. So we met through a mutual friend, Ryan from Truffle Bar, who's been mentioned on this show before. So my background, I've been in the property management and ownership business for about 20 years now. So we have office space and retail space and flex space in the Lehigh Valley. We have some in parts beyond the Lehigh Valley. So I've been working in this family business for a very long time, 20 years. It's been a long time. Most of them have been very good years. And as part of property management, I got involved with my partner, Jim, also on Jim Sipe in the property development business. And we came up with an idea for Salamander. So that's kind of the background of property management led me down this crazy road into pipe freeze prevention technologies, which also brought us together at another point because you guys have helped us out with Salamander marketing and branding through SmartAcre.
Yeah, so it's just interesting the way that your journey goes. You never wake up one day and go, "Yep, I am going to be the guy who is going to stop pipes from bursting," or at least maybe not stop them, but alert people that, hey, there's a problem that's going to happen, right? But before we get into the details of Salamander, and obviously we'll get everything linked up. So if you're already curious as to what we're talking about, a salamander, it's not an animal, but it is a device that could possibly help. But I wanted to bring Jonathan on because you're doing the property management side of things, but I think for our listeners out there that are maybe like a one-man band, or they have very few resources to kind of get things off the ground, get things running from a marketing and sales perspective, I really think you could bring some insight there. But let's start with the idea. So let's start with the problem, right? That caused you to develop this product. And then maybe some of the initial processes that you went through to kind of go through ideation to proof of concept to, like, I don't even know, did you file for a patent? All those things. So let's talk about the early days, like the early setup.
So the very early setup, the very beginning, we're very conservative property managers. And so here we're based in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley, and in the winters here, it gets very cold. You'll have multiple days of below 0 degree days, to below 0 degree weather. And our philosophy used to be, oh my God, that building might be getting very cold. We have to prevent the pipes from freezing. So someone has to drive out to Reading or Bethlehem or wherever we've got property. Let's just make sure the heater is working and that our pipes aren't going to freeze. And in these rooms are these uncalibrated heaters, which means it basically goes from 0 to 10, and you kind of dial it up. So you dial it up to 4, and then 2 weeks later, oh man, we're getting a snow squall. Somebody better take it from 4 to 6. Somebody, So pretty soon, you're just kind of throwing all of this heat energy out. And we had been stung by pipe freeze before. We had a couple of things, but it never really put it together until one year we got a utility bill, a bill from our provider for like $2,000 for a small 10 by 10 sprinkler room. And we said, what's going on? So we go down to the building and we open up the door, and I'm telling you, it was like 95 degrees when you open up the door. Because what happened was the thermostat had burned out. And so the heat just kept pushing and pushing and pushing in this very confined room. And it was like walking into the jungle. The pipes were more at risk for boiling than they were for freezing. And so Jim says, he and I are there together, and he goes, why are we heating when the air gets cold? We should be heating when the water gets cold. Can we do that? And I said, sure, of course we could do that. That's what started the process.
Wow. Yeah. So obviously there was a use case there. And obviously it's not just the impact of that moment of when, because you don't know when it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the middle of the night or something like that, or like you're away, but it's the thought of the damage. But it's not just the damage that happens, right? It's your downtime of the business, and it's just that snowball effect.
Even before you get to damage, if your pipes are frozen, that means that your life safety is compromised. So the people in your building might be compromised from a working system. So that's really the number one. The damage and the remediation and the restoration and the downtime, all of that stuff is just, it's important and it's expensive and it's costly and it's an annoyance and it's painful, but not as painful as the fact that your life safety is compromised.
Got it. So you got the use case, you have this idea. How does V1 start? How do you go about developing something like this?
So V1 actually started in this building here at 3900 Hamilton in South Whitehall Township. And it started because we were trying to figure out what the water temperature differential would be. And so we created an isolated saddle on top of our sprinkler system. And we did this with the approval of John France, who is the fire protection inspector. He's the fire marshal for the township. And we said, this is what we want to do. Can we use our sprinkler system to do this without penetrating, without altering in any way? And he said yes. And so that's really what kind of started it. So we basically started with a vessel with a probe in it, and we were just reading the wireless temperature, and we thought, well, we don't need to heat these rooms as much as we feared that we did, because the water temperature isn't moving much. It's the air temperature that's incredibly volatile. So we, and in the property management business, we thought, there's got to be a million other buildings and hundreds of thousands of property managers who go through this exercise every year. Let's not let the pipes freeze. Let's crank up the heat. Let's do what we can. And everyone's chasing the wrong variable.
Right. So you've gone through that process. Then, like, at what point do you start thinking about, like, who is the ideal customer, right? Like, who's going to, or is it in the early phase you weren't even thinking about that yet? You were just thinking about, like, how do I just do this for us first, right? Proof of concept.
Well, it's funny. Even before that, in the early phase, we were wondering who is doing this, because we wanted to buy the product. Oh. We thought surely somebody is doing this who has experience, who, we could just buy it off the shelf, a Honeywell product, a Tyco product, whatever it is. And we looked around. We asked the sprinkler contractors that we deal with, and nobody knew of such a thing. And so now we realize that there's a delta, that there's this gap in the market between owning a sprinkler system and maintaining a sprinkler system, and the maintenance job is kind of done and handed over to the owner, and now we have to figure out by hook or by crook, prevent these pipes from freezing. So how will we do it? Then we even went to a national trade show, the NFPA, which is the Fire Protection Association trade show. They are the governing body of life safety fire sprinkler systems. And so we went there and we said, this is kind of our thing. I think at that point we were patent pending.
What was that process like of going through to get a patent? I've never done that before. I've done trademarking and I know what that can entail, but
the patent process, we have a very good patent attorney, a guy named Jim McDaniel, who has an office up in Nazareth. So we found him through a mutual friend. He made the process very easy. So he told us that we have to outline what we're doing and put together our drawings. And really, I think the term that he uses, you have to give enough ingredients that you know what's in the cake, but you don't have to tell everybody how to bake the cake. So there is a little bit of proprietary information, but it has to be replicable and it has to be unique. So he helped us through the process, and we ended up getting the patent, which is a constant surprise to me. And then we ended up getting a second patent. So I never saw that coming in my future.
Yeah. What can you share from for those who listen that never done that? Is it expensive to do something like that?
It was expensive. It was, I guess I should say it's relatively expensive. Okay. So we had a very small budget. And I think that our ultimate cost all in was probably between $5,000 and $7,000 for the patent, and that included some prior art search and help with development and some filing. So maybe it was $7,500. I don't think it was more than $10,000. So it was expensive, but it's not exorbitant.
Yeah. So that all that's coming out of your guys' own pocket at that point.
That came out of our pocket, and we ended up doing a pitch competition, a startup pitch competition through Startup Lehigh Valley and Penn State Launchbox, where we placed second. So we got some grant monies on that, and that was delightful to get. And that kind of, that money was spent before it even came through the door. There was some legal stuff and, a lot of it patent related, trying to search and find the right things.
Yeah. So that's some good advice out there. So if you're looking to kind of self-start, self-fund some things, check out options for some grants or some venture, back stuff. There's some small incubator stuff out there where you might be able to plug into. Obviously, know what you're getting into and what you're giving up, but there is some funding out there to at least help, with that burden a little bit.
There are, and there's a lot of resources. So here in the Lehigh Valley, we have Penn State Launchbox, but there is a group called the SBDC, which is the Small Business Development Center, and they're affiliated with the government, and they have branches in with different colleges. I think they're associated with different colleges here in the Lehigh Valley. Lehigh University is one, Kutztown University is another, but it's a national organization. So they have branches all probably wherever you're listening, you're probably not too far from one. And there is assistance that you can get. And we did take classes in how to develop a patent and how to look at some prior art search. And we tried to do a lot of that stuff on our own so that we could be burning our time and sweat equity as opposed to incurring legal cost. And a lot of those resources are offered through SBDC or community colleges or public colleges and public universities or online. This is kind of, there are a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, definitely check out the United States Patent Office, Google that. Do your homework, especially when you're getting started. Everyone usually starts with a name, but that maybe is not the case, right? But when you're doing a name search, especially in this day and age, everything's already taken. So what are the categories that you're in and competing for, and look against those. And if you can, it's good to kind of get that locked up early on, because you never know where it's going to go, and you don't want to be fighting stuff near the end. And I've known some colleagues and past clients who have run into some trouble there where they've gotten deep into something and unfortunately it doesn't work out. So it's good to get that out of the way.
I think one of the other things that's good about going to classes and exploring opportunities like this is that it gives you an opportunity to network with other people who are in your position or a similar position or like-minded position, because as you're starting I don't even want to call it a venture, but as you're starting to explore this path and trying to find out, is this going to, are we going to breathe life into it? Is it already taken? Is it, am I barking up the wrong tree? Is it going to be cost prohibitive? But you can start to meet, and I don't think there's any better place in the world to do that than the Lehigh Valley, because you start to meet people who do manufacturing, people who do marketing, people who do accounting, and people who do legal. I mean, this valley has such a breadth of services that's offered. But again, I'm sure that it's everywhere. I think you've always got to be open and, posting on LinkedIn and starting to kind of, sow those opportunities. So there are opportunities out there, and you can compound them. You can make them exponentially better if you keep going and using and utilizing and following up and connecting with the teachers afterward. What can we do? If grandma died tomorrow and gave you money, where would you spend it? How could we do this thing better? Who's doing it? What are books we should read? Resources there.
All right. So gone through that kind of that patent exercising there. Where do you go next then? Is it so? And you've identified, a conference, a place for it. It seems like it has a viable, option. Where do you go next? Like, do you immediately go into, marketing it, or is it more like we still need to be doing more R&D?
We did. I think the answer is you got to do it all. Yeah. You got to start spinning your marketing plate, and you got to start spinning your R&D plate, so that you're not caught flat-footed. Because if you go too far down one route, you've really neglected the other. So where we started next is there was a mentor of ours in the fire sprinkler industry, a guy named Ted Wills, who was the president of Anchor Fire Protection. And he had been servicing, actually, this building is how I knew him. His company had been servicing it. And we went down to his office and we said, this is kind of our idea. What do you think of it as a sprinkler expert? Do you think this has merit? Do you think people should be doing this? Are people out there already doing this? Tell me why it's bad. I've had 1,000 conversations with people of all ranges and expertises, and from marketing to legal. And we said, this is my idea. I'm not a life safety fire sprinkler guy. I don't have that expertise. I'm not a Fortune 1000 CEO, but here's how I'm going to learn. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me what you would do better. Tell me the fault in my hardware. Tell me the fault in my logic. What am I missing? And answering questions like that and being vulnerable to the answers will take you down interesting paths. So, for example, when we started, we thought, oh my God, everybody worries about fire sprinkler systems from freezing. So wet, water-filled system, you want to prevent that from freezing. So we developed a solution that monitors water temperature and alerts to low water temperature. We met with Ted. We talked about the solution. What do you think? And he said, most problem is in the dry fire sprinkler systems. And we said, what's a dry fire sprinkler system? So he told us about, this other market, this other industry, this other sector that we had no idea about, no information. And we thought, well, we can adapt our solution to that. That's not too awful hard. And now all of a sudden we've doubled our product.
Yeah. So I'm already picking up on something, which is when you're by yourself and maybe you have an idea, but you're not the expert in all of these things. It's good to lean on people that do have expertise, because that's going to help you get going faster. It's going to build more confidence, right? So don't be afraid to partner up with people.
Absolutely. There are the good news and bad news is you will always find people smarter than you. And you've got to be able to try and leverage that expertise as much as you're able. Some people want to jump along and help you on the ride for free. Yeah. Some people charge you to do that. Some people have a balance. Some people want a stake in your business. And you've got to decide, like another plate, you've got to decide which one you want to do, because no one's path is the same. No one's path is straight. It always has a little bump or a little hiccup or something in it. And it's up to you as the founder or the person with the vision to say, this is what I want. And maybe you want to sacrifice some of your own labor by partnering up with somebody who wants to take an equity position in your business. Or maybe you want to say, no, I don't want to give that up. I'll just do it myself. Right. So maybe you sacrifice some like that. It's kind of not a right answer, but it's right for you.
Yeah, and it's tough. You have to, especially early on, where it's like you don't necessarily have you have an idea. You don't have necessarily a valuation, perhaps, of the company. So what is the value of that idea? How much are you willing to give up for partnership, something that, we did early on, where, you believe in it, right? And you feel like it is. And I always chuckle too, like the people that come onto Shark Tank, that you have ones where you're like, there's no way that is a $10 million idea. Where did you come up with that evaluation? And then there's others where it's like, no, that idea is worth so much more. So that obviously there's some learnings there. So you talked about like having to do kind of, a lot, spinning at once. At what point did you get to it where you had maybe the first client? Like, jump ahead a little bit to like how did you get the first client? Like, how did you go out and do that? What was your like process for, hunting that?
So our first client was ourselves. Right. As Marissa Mayer says, we got to eat our own dog food. We want to make sure that it works and that we're offering something that's robust and that is going to do what we say it's going to do. Maybe version 1, it may not do it as pretty as I had hoped, but it's still your minimally viable product. And so we had a meeting. Again, this kind of comes back to the property management side. We had a meeting with a real estate investment trust called Brandywine Realty Trust down in Conshohocken, and we told them what we were offering and would they be interested in a solution like that. And their ears perked up. And so they said, yeah, we want to try it in one of these buildings. And we said, great. And so that's kind of a good news, bad news situation where now all of a sudden we have to prove it out and we have to learn along with them. But they were a great platform for us to get started a little bit, to workshop some ideas back and forth. They were a really good partner, and they still remain a customer today.
How did you get them?
Through my commercial real estate network. Okay. I wanted to start with really big companies who had properties in and around my geography. And I know Brandywine had a lot of office buildings in suburban Philadelphia, and the office vacancy rates were starting to creep up and up and up. And in vacant spots, that's where you worry more about pipe freeze. Yeah. So that's kind of how it first started.
Okay. So then you got them, and not only so we didn't touch on this yet, but and we'll show it on screen. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, jump over to YouTube and you can kind of see what we're talking about here. This point we'll show what the product is. So it's a physical, and you have one with too. You can show it right on. So this is it's a physical piece of hardware that gets installed, but there's technology built into it as well. So let's talk about the technology piece. And did that come like right away, or was that like an afterthought? Not an afterthought, but did that come later?
It came. So this version of the reservoir that's here, this hex steel one, is probably our fourth version. The first one was not as refined.
Well, that's okay. That's the way. That's what should happen, right? In V1.
But absolutely. Yeah. So, looking back, it's I can't say that it's an embarrassment, but I can say how proud I am of the evolution that it went from 0 to now 4. But it was very different. And then we ended up finding so we make the hardware, we make the reservoir itself. The software and the electronics are third-partied. So they have the whole suite, which we just integrate with. So that we had explored early on, when you find somebody who can do everything for you, we found somebody who had a proof of concept, and it was in a little Lego box, but it was a SIM card with a probe and all of the stuff that we needed, and it sent out the alerts. It was great. But it wasn't. We knew that wasn't the scalable, that wasn't the reliable product that we needed, especially in supporting life safety. We knew we needed something much more robust. So we found this company, and it's been a great partnership.
Yeah, so there's a little bit so we jump ahead to the revenue side of things for you. You don't have to say what it is or share what you want, but the revenue side of it is, so there's physical installation, but there's also a monitoring, like kind of a recurring revenue side of it, right?
Correct.
And how did you come up with that, or like how did that come about?
So it's interesting. So we do not do the installation part. Okay. Because in order to work on a fire sprinkler system, that should be done by a licensed professional. So it has always been our intent never to turn a wrench on somebody's system. I'm not licensed for that. I don't want that responsibility. I also like the idea about getting the sprinkler contractor comfortable with the solution so that they know exactly where to put it and how to install it and how to do all of that stuff. But again, back to the commercial real estate side, we know that there are ongoing building maintenance costs that get shared by all of the tenants in a particular building. And alarm monitoring, like fire sprinkler tamper and fire sprinkler flow or burglar alarm, whatever those monitoring costs are, those are borne in a pro rata percentage by each of the tenants that participate. So it's really a cost that's not borne directly by landlord, it's a reimbursed cost. And so we said, we should do that with Salamander so that the landlord is incentivized to put it in, and the tenants are incentivized to have it, but the landlord doesn't really have to pay for it. Again, my background being commercial real estate, I've been trying to think about this thing from a landlord's perspective. So I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's the answer. That's the way that we came to that conclusion and that approach.
Yeah. So again, fast forwarding even a little bit more now, how has it scaled? It sounds like you have multiple clients now. Like what ahas, or if you could go back and, share any advice on these are some of the things that we probably should have thought about more, or anything that, that you could share from the scaling side of things.
I think the biggest kind of that piece of advice about getting customers is that, unfortunately, you just never know where it's going to come from. So I've given a presentation about Salamander and our approach. I feel like I must have given 1,000 of them, 10,000 of them. And every once in a while, someone will call me up, or they'll say, you did a presentation for me last year and I really wasn't concerned, but I've been thinking about it all year long and now I want to do it. So you just never know when that payoff is going to be, or when that phone rings, or what conversation you may have had, or at a trade show or at a podcast. I mean, you just kind of never know what is going to be that hook. It's kind of amazing and kind of frustrating at the same time, but it's always rewarding.
Amen to that, because that the great point there is, it's not just this immediate transactional thing where it's just like, I need this, I'm just going to go get it, right? And I think as marketers and people that are in sales, and you just never know, timing is always it, right? You will get customers where, especially if you're really advanced and you see how they came in, if there was like a long tail search, or they've found you in a way where it's like, I need this support, I'm looking for this, and their buyer intent immediately goes to like, how much does it cost, or something like that. They're like in that, hey, I'm waving money around, please take this, versus somebody that's in the educational phase where it's like, I've stumbled upon this, tell me more, especially at a trade show where they may not be out there shopping for that. So the point is, right, you have that person, hopefully and I'll ask you how you're doing this in a minute, but hopefully you're acquiring their information in your CRM, something like HubSpot, where you're able to log them and then nurture them over time, remind them, do email, put them into lookalike campaigns or something like that on LinkedIn, where they're seeing your advertising, because it's going to take time, right? Especially if you're just starting, you don't know what your life cycle from identification to a close one opportunity, how long that takes. But a lot of our customers, the buying cycle is very long. So you need to be nurturing them And now way things are, you have to break through, right? You can't just be doing email. You have to be doing a whole bunch of different things to try to get their attention. We've even gone back to like trying to do more personalized conversations, picking up the phone. I did that a couple times, and like I called on a prospect. I was like, hey, is now an okay time to just catch up? I guess so. Like it was like out of the blue. So okay, so I was spewing a little bit there, but like what were you doing? Like what are you doing on that regards to kind of keep people engaged or top of mind that this could be an option for them?
So again, the good news and bad news about being, a relative team of one is that I'm doing all I can, but am I burning calories heading in the right direction is something that I don't always, you never know as you're going. You can kind of only judge that retrospectively. But I spend a lot of time making phone calls because I feel like people get so inundated. It's so easy to delete an email. So I do LinkedIn posts usually every Tuesday. Sometimes we do it Wednesday Words of Wisdom, just to try and keep that drip of, hey, here we are. By the way, don't forget, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're insightful, sometimes they're newsy. I mean, you can follow us on LinkedIn and you'll see they're never meant to be, so incredibly deep that you now have to like take a mind break and figure it out. And it's not so laughably funny that it's ridiculous. That's not how I like to come across. I don't mind not taking myself too seriously. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could see why. But I do find that phone calls seems to be the way that I break through the best to remind people, hey, here I am. Do you remember when we met? And having a name like Salamander, people remember, which I never thought of in the beginning, but it's kind of clever because it's just not expected. And then, like you said before, like how did I get stuck becoming the guy who's ranting and raving about pipe freeze? I don't know, but I got picked to be that guy. So Salamander and pipe freeze, like those are what I get associated with. So even when I'm leaving messages, I always try and include that information there to hopefully jog their memory back.
No, that's great advice. Repetition is key. Because people can forget, but if you create a brand and you create something that is memorable, like you have the name Salamander, and how did that come about?
So Salamander was named by Tyler, who is Jim's son.
Okay, so people in the business that were in the early phase.
The three original partners were me, Jim, and Tyler. And so Tyler came up with the name Salamander because the ancient Greeks believed that salamanders had mythical properties to be able to withstand forest fires. Because as things would burn, the salamanders would be the first thing back because they lived in the damp and the decay. So they always thought that their skin was fireproof. I happen to like salamander not only for that reason, but because they're perfectly happy to live in these damp, dark rooms like sprinkler rooms. And they're also ectothermic, which means if they get too cold, they'll freeze. So you don't want them to freeze either. They're perfectly happy to live in the damp and the dark and just let them be. And they're our logo is a little green salamander. So the green we liked also because of the energy savings aspect of it. So even our prototype, our salamanders were always green.
It's a good story. And I always say when you think about branding, you think about creating an identity, it needs to tell a story behind it. Because somebody's going to ask you, like, where did that come about? And if you're like, I don't know, I just thought it was cool. I just picked an animal and a color to make my name.
That usually is one of the questions, like, as we're talking about what we do. How come salamander? That's you're right. That's usually a great, and I also like that it's a good conversation starter. That it's not just the XJ4000.
Yeah, exactly. And if what my advice would be is if you have a brand right now and it doesn't tell a story, make something up. No, seriously, like have that ready to go because you're going to get asked at one point. And we're not talking here. Well, like we're not talking about necessarily a retail item. This is a business item. This isn't something that somebody's walking into Home Depot and buying.
And what else is interesting is our company name is so much less important than the product name. So I used to register at trade shows and say, oh, the company is JTJ, but we're Salamander. I kind of bagged that the JTJ, not that it's not a functioning entity, it is, but I say it's Jonathan from Salamander. We're going to register something. I want it to say Salamander. I don't want it to say JTJ anymore because I want people to know what they're going to get when Salamander is here.
Also great advice. If you're doing trade shows, you're doing online events, lead with the product. Like that's what people are going to remember. Like that's what it is. Great stuff there. So I was asking back on the technology side of like how you're managing that right now. What other tools or hacks or things that you're using to help with acceleration or to help with scale or to help keep the plate spinning, in your words?
I knew this question was coming. I've listened to enough episodes. I like and subscribe. So,
by the way, if you're not, hit that subscribe button and like us, and please drop a star or two. No, well, please drop 5 stars if we're doing an okay job. Love to hear from our listeners. But go ahead. Sorry.
So one of the pieces of software that I've used for a very long time is a web service called Follow Up Then. The website is followupthen.io. And so if someone sends you an email and they say, hit me back in 15 days, you can send that message 15 days at fut.io and it goes away from your inbox. You can delete it. And then 15 days from now, it'll send you that thing. Don't forget, you wanted to be reminded of this thing. I use it for everything. Every day I have follow-ups that come in and you can go online and you can see what's coming down. That I was using before I was using HubSpot. That was my original CRM, was what I call the boomerang approach. Just send it out 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 15 days, 6 months, November 2nd, whatever it is. And then you talked to me about HubSpot. And so I've been into HubSpot, which I think I've been in for about a year now. Yeah. So I feel like I'm just getting the hang of it. I'm certainly not using it to its full abilities, but I am using it. Those are probably the 2 biggest sources I use. Evernote would probably be the third.
Oh, okay. What's Evernote is just where you're keeping thoughts.
Evernote is like OneNote on Microsoft, but it's so you can keep all of your notes and thoughts and restaurants and pictures, whatever it is on your, on a web accessible platform or mobile or whatever. So there's some stuff that if I'm on my phone and I can't VPN into my office, like there's some stuff that I keep on Evernote that's important. I've been using Evernote for ages and love it.
Do you ever go? You ever when you go on vacation or you're out and about? Do you always have that hat on where you're looking around buildings and you're like, oh, that's not good there. Like that's a problem. Do you?
I do. I try not to too awful much, but when it comes up, I was in Memphis for a trade show when the guy it was like a hotel shuttle that was taking me to the expo center. Okay. And so I was talking to the guy and he goes, oh, well, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a pipe freeze prevention. And he goes, oh, you should call this hotel because they had a big freeze. And I go, okay, I'll call. I never have any qualms about calling it and kind of chasing that down. But I will tell you that my percentage of people who go, oh yeah, you're right, I'd love to get this in. People go, oh yeah, I think I know what I'm doing now. It's never rewarding, but I always, because you just never know, I always will have the conversation. I never am afraid of that. And it took a long time, to be able to have that conversation quickly, clearly. I mean, it's just I've been in the Salamander business for about 10 years now, so it's a lot of reps. I feel like I'm just getting it down.
What advice would you give people that are just getting started, other than practicing, of course? Like for me, what I try to record myself and listen back In the early days, I would just do that or leave myself voicemails before technology. But now, like if you have a Zoom account or if you have some sort of recording that does transcription, you can look back at that, throw it into AI, and you can say like, what are my most common words? Am I saying and ah and things like that, or tripping up? We've even had more advanced technology, SalesLoft's technology that does conversation intelligence. You can put in keywords there that you're saying or not saying. So what do you do, or what advice would you give people to help kind of practice that elevator pitch or anything like that?
I think all of the stuff that you said is good, and nothing beats getting the reps, getting those words in your mouth and out and clear, and just paring it back until you're really at the marrow of your message. It takes a long time. It takes a lot longer than you think. But you need to find opportunities to practice. When I was working on the pitch competition, they said you have to submit a 2-minute video, and then there was a 1-minute video. And so I had to, it probably took me a month and a half to get a 1-minute pitch together, because it started out as 3 pages, and then you had to just butcher it back and still not lose anything. I think that was extremely important. It's like boot camp for your brain and for your business, just to be able to clarify what you're doing in a minute or less, in 30 seconds or less. And so now at trade shows, it used to be, hey, can I talk to you about our solution at Pipefree? Now as people walk by, I just always ask them, is Pipefree something that you worry about? Yes or no? Because if you're worried about it, we should talk. And if you're not worried about it, keep walking. We'll find someone who is. But it's kind of that, and that took me a long time.
Yeah. Like, let's start with the trade show. Are like trade shows still worth it? Like, are the type of categories of trade shows that you're plugging into? Like, I get asked that a lot, if like they're still worth it.
I really question that. I don't. Okay. I think the answer is the bigger ones for me are probably not. Okay. I think the smaller niche ones probably are. I have not found. I found a lot of good people at the shows, but it may, again, a one-man band. I don't know if it's my ability to convert, but I get good traction, but I haven't had good closure. Through smaller ones, it's been better. Although the audience is certainly smaller, it's a lot less expensive, to try out.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard that's still working, something that we're going to be integrating into what we're doing, is rather than spending, and I'm saying this is more for like larger trade shows where like 10,000 plus people. So that's big. I think that's big. So rather than doing a sponsorship of like sponsoring the coffee table or the urinal cake or having a booth, like you can have micro booths that cost $20K. Yeah. Rather than spending that, take that money, take a fraction of that money and do a dinner, do an event. So you got to do this in advance. You can't be doing this like weeks before. So like figure out, okay, I have an event that's happening 9 months from now. Plan out an event. So I'm going to rent out this bar. I'm going to rent out this little like arcade, whatever it is, some sort of cool little event that can happen in the evening, because generally speaking, when people are going to these multi-day events, they're going to go out and they're going to do some nightlife. They're going to want to do something, right? And they're going to want to do it for free.
And I will tell you this, no one will remember who the coffee sponsor was, but they will remember the night that Smartacre or whoever had this small get-together, a little breakaway, a little something. But people don't remember your lanyard sponsors or the badge sponsors of the coffee table.
No. You could still make it so the good thing is that you make it by exclusive invite only. So then you start to pre-book people. They have to register. Use like an Eventbrite or something like that to register the people. You can then doing it during the conference, if you're out there walking around, like have some scans or a QR code or something that people can go to and be like, hey, when you sit down at a session together, it'd be like, well, hey, what are you doing tonight? Oh, nothing. I'm just gonna go back to my room or whatever. Well, if you're not busy, just around the corner, we're gonna be here. You'll be my guest. I would love to have you, and you can grab some bite to eat, and it won't cost you anything. Oh, cool. I mean, that's a way to do. You can bring some of your clients. So invite some of your clients that are there. If you have partnerships, have a partner in that room as well. So you're kind of covering all of your bases, and then you're controlling that. You're controlling the environment. It's on your terms. You'd be surprised, but like, especially if you're in a big market city, you mentioned like Memphis. Guess what? All of those restaurants would love for you to just pay them the stipend, the flat fee to just rent the whole thing out.
It'll go, that money will go a lot farther at an event like that than it will be sponsoring the coffee or the urinal cake. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. So, and it's fun to do. I mean, it does take a lot of logistics. It does take planning. My advice is to keep it simple. That's my motto of the year is the KISS rule: keep it simple, stupid, or what I say, keep it simple, Snyder. Because you can get too advanced and too like whatever, you can it can go too far, right? And you end up wasting. When people come there, they're going to want to they're going to want to network. That's the number one thing. They want to talk to other people. They want to get a free drink out of it, right? What is your job? Your job is to try to mingle with them, but get their information. Just make sure you're getting their information, and it's the follow-up. If you're going to give something away, here's the other trick, right? To do a giveaway, get them there. And it's got to be cool. Like, I don't know, like an exclusive Stanley color mug right now or something. Like, make sure it's cool, but don't give it away there. 2 reasons. They don't want to carry it back on the thing, but here's the best thing. If you give it to them there, you have nothing to follow up with them on.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So you've won the Stanley, but you know what? We're gonna take care of shipping it for you. I'm gonna get in touch with you in a week after you're settled back at home. Guess what? Hi, this is Jonathan from Salamander. You won. I just want to have a conversation with you. Guess what? It gives you a reason to talk to him again.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. You remember how much fun we had? That's great. Yeah.
So yeah, those are just some things that we picked up on, along the way. Is there anything else that comes to mind with this journey that you've had that you'd want to, just share wisdom?
I think the biggest, and even the story that you mentioned like this, there has never been a better time to do this journey. If you're waiting for the planets to align, well, you're 2 days too late. But if you're waiting for a sign, let this be your sign to start now, because the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. Just start today. And there are so many tools available. There are so many people available. There are so many resources available. And now, unfortunately now with AI, it's like you can get a lot more help. If you're just a person, a business of one, and you need to write a business plan, now you have a business partner in an AI that can really help give you ideas. We did it the old-fashioned way, but it's like never has there been a better time to get these tools, to have these parties, to meet people at these micro shows or micro networking things, just to say, this is what I want. What I found is kind of surprising and not surprising is that everybody wants to help. So many people are in your corner, you just don't know it yet.
Yeah, no, very well said. Very well said. Community, anything related to, being part of the community, and we just, as humans, I think we strive for that. We strive for that connection point. So if our amazing listeners want to get in touch with you, can they do that? And how so?
Absolutely. So I'm also a believer in the pay it back, pay it forward. So yes, if I can help in any way, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you looked up, if you just put in Jonathan Salamander, you should be able to find me. It's pretty easy. You can go to my website, which is getsalamander.com. We deliberately, blatantly ripped that off from getsmartacre.com. So you can find me on that, and on LinkedIn is all my contact information is there, and I'd welcome a chance to hear from you.
Great. We'll get that all linked up on agencybalance.com as well. And really appreciate you sharing this journey. Hopefully this was good. This was good for our listeners. I hope they got a lot out of this. I did. I learned some things.
I appreciate having the conversation. It's nice to be on this side of the audio. I've been a listener for a long time, so it's nice to be on the microphone side. And I definitely think it was worth I think it's a 5-star conversation. So if you have a minute and would take a minute right now to rate Agency Balance, a 5-star review on the podcast app that you're listening on, I know that would make David very happy.
Oh, and I didn't even pay him to say that. That's the trick right there.
This is why you want to do these things, because when you have people who are helping you, if I can return the favor, even by asking people to write a review or leave a star, which doesn't cost you anything, happy to do it.
Great points, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Subscribe to the podcast at agencybalance.com, Apple, YouTube, or Spotify.